Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to PDINA, Royally Teachable Moments. We're back, and there's just more stuff, more things to discuss. But do you like my top? This is a little risque for me. One shoulder exposed, like, ooh. I was like, I don't know if I want to wear this, but it was on sale and it was real cheap. And I'm thinking, why not, right? Why not? Just wear it, okay? So I'm going to wear it. I hope some of y'all not offended by my exposed shoulder. But, okay, let's get into it. I wanted to talk about Archwell podcast that came out with Andy Cohen. We know this gentleman from the Housewives of Orange County and of New Jersey, and there's all these different housewives shows. I would watch them occasionally, but it's really interesting to see how Andy Cohen is saying some things didn't really go the way Meghan is saying that they went when he heard the podcast, because it was different than what they actually talked about. And when I say different, I mean Meghan interjected or put things in the podcast after they had their interview. And Andy's was like, why would you not address this with me when we were sitting down and talking about it face to face? And it's just very typical of this picture, this false picture that Meghan tends to paint, because she wants people to see one side. And if she can't control the narrative, then she's going to paint it the way that she wants to see it, rather than how it could be painted if someone else had their say. Andy Cohen has called into question in his own memoir over the narration that happened during the podcast that actually aired on the Archetypes podcast with Meghan. Andy writes in the Daddy Diaries, in his book, he writes, Meghan's podcast came out and it was interesting to see how they produced it. She narrates it, which is an effective device, especially if you're cutting an hour down to 20 minutes, which she did. However, in that narration, she talks about what a tough conversation this was for her, mentioning that she has conflicting feelings about housewives. I think it was interesting that she said it in the narration, but she didn't discuss it with me head on. And wouldn't that have made for a much more dynamic conversation? And I would say so, yes, too. But she wasn't prepared for any pushback that he would have given her. She wanted to address how she felt. That wasn't right. And he just had to just shut your mouth. Just shut your mouth. And she knew that wouldn't happen. So she put it in the narration portion of the podcast, so there was no pushback. So during the podcast narration, Meghan said of the reality TV franchise, I'm conflicted about this, not about Andy Cohen's success, his rightfully deserved success, but on what his success specifically with his franchise has been based off of. So because of, as we grappled this season with what archetypes are and how limiting they are, on the flip side of that is, we are exploring giving women the space and allowance to be exactly who they are as complicated, layering, challenging, funny, silly, etc. Or in a franchise like Housewives, are we fueling the fire of archetypes by creating caricatures of women? Meghan plays a clip of an argument about cheating from the Real Housewives of New Jersey, and in her narration afterward groans and says, oh my gosh. Oh man, this is a tough one for me. This is a tough one because, as you heard, Andy describes this as a feminist show, and I want to hear him out on that, because this drama, it tends to feed off the kinds of women that they are often featured on the show, or at least one facet of their personalities. And yes, some might call them stereotypes. And I think for this reason, people have really, like I'm explaining, mixed feelings about the show and the role that the show might play in perpetuating the sorts of labels we've been discussing on archetypes. So I thought it was important to really hear Andy out on this and to get to know him a little bit better. Now, that's what she says. However, Andy's memoir suggests that she didn't actually present her concerns to him during the conversation, meaning he did not have any opportunity to address them. And it appears he turned up to the interview ready to defend the show from similar criticism. So, many people, I'm sure, have said this to him about the stereotypes and fueling these caricatures of women and feeding into the certain silly scenarios that people tend to look at women as. And he was ready to defend that. So rather than actually mentioning that to him during their interview, which I listened to, she didn't bring that up when she was face to face with him. She wanted to speak about her pushback after they spoke in her narration about the episode. And so this shows you the sign of someone who is not strong enough to go up against someone who thinks differently than you, or who may give you some pushback and have a good argument to, why are you hating? And she can't handle that. She can't address the pushback. And it's Meghan wanting to live in her pretty bubble, pay her lots of money, call her the Duchess, and shut your mouth, let me be who I am and tell you what I think, and you listen. That's how she wants to paint this picture. And Andy is simply saying, why did you not bring it up when I was there with you speaking? So it just shows you how weak and how non-effective she is as an interviewer, which we know she did not even do the work for. And how she wants to perpetuate her own importance is an abomination.
Well, there's also a really good just piece of advice in general, whether you're on a reality show or not. I think most people can sniff out inauthenticity.
Right.
And so I think it's a really good reminder for people, especially as we talk about labels and tropes and trying to fit into some sort of box or mold. People can feel it when you're doing that. They can feel it when you are not being yourself.
Meghan, girl, you need to start listening to your own words, because you know what, girl, we can feel it when you are not being yourself. I think you done got drowned in your own fakeness, because I don't think we've ever seen when she was being herself. She's constantly fake. Okay, so going to the producer of TikTok, Rebecca Sananes, she launched her complaint after Hollywood Reporter published this 40 most powerful people in podcasting, and they failed to include her in this. And I would be upset too, because when you're behind the scenes and you're doing all the work, but yet you got this fairy tale princess in front of you floating around like, I'm the princess. I'm the princess, yes. And I have a podcast. And she's taking all the accolades and everyone's looking at her, and you in the background looking at her with the side eye like, look, woman, you look, I did that. And you get the credit for it? I know that would make you upset.
Research, write, make scripts, make the sound good, score. Everything you love about your favorite podcast is because a producer made it. And producers are being undervalued, undercredited, and underpaid. And it's making the industry boring and slow. Let's do better.
She goes on to say, I am the executive producer and creator of Archetypes that was hosted by Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. The 40 most powerful people in podcasting are not executives. They're not celebrity hosts, and they're not talent agents. They are the producers. Producers edit and they research and they write scripts and they make the sound good. They score everything you love about your favorite podcast. It is because a producer has made it. And producers are being undervalued. They are undercredited and underpaid, and it is making the industry boring and slow. Let's do better. This right here is the kicker of a story, because this man, Harry, he is so out of touch with reality. He doesn't even understand how he is portrayed in the world, that he thinks this is what has come out. Okay, remember the guy, Bill, who talked about wanting to get drunk and then tell his story about Harry coming up with some ideas for podcasts? This is one of them. So Harry wanted to interview, get this folks, Vladimir Putin. Oh yes, he wanted to interview Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump, and Mark Zuckerberg about their childhood traumas, like growing up and childhood traumas. Like, you're not just shooting a shoot with Vladimir Putin, excuse me. First of all, this man is very serious. He is a dictator, and you're not somebody that would even pique his interest to even want to say hello to, excuse me. He was hoping to interview these three men about their upbringing, childhood traumas on a Xpatty podcast. Oh my goodness. You have to understand something. This is how you know he is so out of touch with life in general, because do you know the work that goes into journalism, the people who have built their reputations behind their body of work to even be able to be taken seriously, to even ask the question to speak to someone like a Vladimir Putin? For Harry to think that he would be able to interview what? Are you serious, man? You have lost your ever-loving mind. You don't even understand the work that goes behind being a journalist and having a reputation to be able to interview someone like that. This was after it got revealed after their podcast was axed by Spotify. Insiders claimed earlier that this month they would stop tell-all interviews that bash the royal family and that Meghan has nothing left to say. And we know that's just them also speaking out the side of their face, because more than likely, in order to keep making money, they're going to have to speak about the royals. So I just think it's laughable that someone like a Harry, his ideas, how he sees himself, says a lot about his perspective in the world. He needs help. He needs serious help, because if he is going around in this world and he in an actual meeting with producers thought that he could even have the potential to interview these people, shows you how far beyond the scope of reality that he is seeing at this moment. It's quite scary, I would say. Harry, no, you need some help. You need serious help to think that you can interview these people. You better get to skipping, because ain't nobody looking at you seriously. So according to a new report, William and Sophie were together for the Royal Foundation screening of Rhino Man. The event was hosted by United for Wildlife at the Battersea Power Station. And at one point, William even introduced Sophie by saying, "This is my aunt." Who knew that they had such a sweet relationship between them? You have to sometimes also focus on these good pleasantries that we find within the royal family. And I just love how the royals are just getting on with their business, being a great example to a lot of people. And also that William plans to end homelessness. That is, can we just give it up for William? I think that is so admirable for him to have this goal to end homelessness. This, my friends, is why having a royal family, I think, is such a great thing, because being able to pull off something like that, I think William is the best person to be able to pull something like that off. And I remember when they were younger, William and his brother Harry were younger, Diana would take them to shelters, and she wanted them to see what it was like as an average person who may not have much, what your life would be like if you were destitute and didn't have much, because I think it puts things into real perspective. And I love to see how William is thinking about how he can end homelessness, while you have something like Harry and Meghan, and how Meghan has changed Harry's perspective and view of the world to think living in a mansion with 16 bathrooms is a great goal or benchmark that they have met in life. The contrast and dynamic of that is so telling, that William wants to end homelessness and Harry wants to live in more luxury and have more consumable lifestyle, just necessities that are above and beyond the basic needs of life. It just shows you the perspective of how they see the world. William sees himself clearly in a way that is very much aligned with the reality of the world. And Harry is just looking sideways, crooked, and not able to see straight because of this woman that had knocked his head to the side, because he can't possibly begin to understand how things truly are in a world, because this wife of his is knocking him every which way to not have clear perspective. It's very, very telling.